So you know how the weather is right now up north, and they're dealing with this horrible, cold spell, and we, hope everybody try to stay as warm as you can, and hope that works out. But
don't go anywhere.
So, like, really, I mean, it's freezing cold, and they were showing pictures. There were people standing as far as the cameras would reach to see if this groundhog was going to see a shadow or not.
Maybe.
I mean, you have nothing else to do
Well,
than to go freeze your ass off and see if a groundhog is going to see a shadow.
They need hope. Hope and dreams. It's really cold, so they need hope and dreams.
I hope these same people pay attention at the election ballots.
Right? If we're willing to go out for a groundhog, hopefully we'll go out for elections.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't
they
get it.
They stand in line for Santa Claus, but yet they won't go and
right.
Go vote.
So, I don't know exactly if I believe in this whole, but I hope it's true because, like, it's not that it's so much that it's cold. It's just like no one can get over this cold. Like I've basically been feeling like some days I wake up feeling good, some days I feel like crap. But like I know people that have been sick for a couple months straight and can't get over this cold.
I go to school. I have a 7-year-old daughter in school. Everybody's sick in Germany.
Yeah.
But half of kindergarten was missing, and everybody's been sick lately. And then we have the measles outbreak.
Right.
And that's on like a top emergency right now.
Yeah, all the anti-vaxxers.
Yep.
One of the few things that Cindy Lake and I disagree on.
What?
I think the anti-vaxxers, I don't get it.
Just vaccinate your kids and let's move on.
Yeah.
Well, she's big into homeschooling too. So.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, no disrespect. I mean, I like Cindy Lake a whole lot, and I'm sure she's done her research. But I don't get it. There's been so many people back and forth of whether vaccines actually cause autism or can cause autism or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. I think I would. I think I'd chance it.
I think the trick is not to get them all at once.
Yeah.
Spread them out a little bit.
Well, yeah. If anybody should know, you and John, you guys have more shots in your life than.
Mm-hmm. We get them all at once.
Right. I was gonna say, don't we just go through and there's a big.
Yeah.
There's a big.
Boom, boom, boom.
That's why I'm the way I am right now.
I thought that was because you smoked too much.
Okay, that might make me change my mind. Maybe vaccination. No.
Right. I don't know if Steve is our poster child. We have problems.
But there was a conversation we were talking about last week, I believe. But I know I was talking about this with my brother about in New York that bill to abort children at birth.
Yeah.
And apparently he took it to heart because I was really talking about how the Democrats approved this bill, and my brother's a Democrat. So he said he looked into it. So this morning he wrote me and he says that the late-term abortions allow women to get an abortion well into their third trimester if the mother life is physically or mentally at risk. So I just wanted to clarify that just in case.
I still don't think it's something that should have been celebrated, and I think that the ability to kill.
Well, the celebration part is just out of whack.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of ethical and moral lines.
Well, I have a very strong opinion on it, and I'm against it. But this is what I would suggest for everyone to do. Really, truly look and do some research on Roe v. Wade, because when Roe v. Wade was signed into law, there was actually another court case that immediately followed Roe v. Wade, and it was ruled on in the same year.
Right.
And I want to say it was Roe v. Doe, or it could be it just if you look it up, it'll tell you the exact court case. And here's the issue with it. The mother's life being at risk because of that specific court case, they defined it as it's defined by what the mother and the physician, the delivering physician at the time, deemed to be at her risk. Right. So they can deem it emotional, they can deem it monetary, they can deem it a lot of other things.
That's a problem.
So it allows for there to be a lot of leeway. And the one thing that I'm going to say is, if you're a doctor and you are going to make more money based on one decision versus another, I would hope that most doctors would pick the right one. However, there are a lot of people out there that care more about money than they do like
About life.
about life and important things and character and stuff of that nature. So it kind of opens it up into an area that I'm not comfortable with. But again, I would just suggest for people to go and look that up. If you look up Roe v. I think it's Roe v. Doe, but if you just look up Roe v. Wade, it'll also give you a list of the other court cases. And if you look up that one, it will tell you what the Supreme Court defines as mother's life risks and how it can be determined. And I think if you looked at that, you would understand that maybe this ruling goes a little too far.
Yeah. Well, you guys done with your rants?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a commercial break. This is Steve Sanson, Christina Ortiz, and Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics. And we're going to come back with Anwar Congress, going to discuss the corruption within family courts. We'll be right back. Well, you think I know these things? Like I got a crystal ball? Anwar,
Yes.
you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Hold on. Okay. Can you hear me now? Steve?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, John, what do you think? I got a crystal ball? Like I know this shit? I'm supposed to like look at my crystal ball. Oh yeah.
48 hours. I guarantee you will be up within 48 hours. No, we weren't criticizing.
We weren't criticizing.
Yeah,
you.
we were just
You were saying
you were all right.
so. A friend passed away. Like I'm supposed to fucking know this shit. Like goddamn. Like I'm supposed to know. You don't leave a motherfucking message, so brother ain't gonna fucking be. Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, and Christina Ortiz of Veterans in Politics. We have Anwar Congress. He's going to be discussing the corruption within family court. Mr. Congress, how you doing today?
Hey, fantastic. And how are you, Steve?
I'm doing good. Where are you calling from, and tell us about yourself?
All right. Right now, I am calling you guys from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
So it's a little cold there.
I am retired United States Army, a loving father of my beautiful daughter, and constitutionalist. I am a constitutionalist national of the United States of America.
Okay.
Hard-working engineer at the same time. So.
All right. Well, Minnesota. Well, is that how far? Or is this Duluth or Brainerd or where are you?
Minneapolis. He said it.
Oh, Minneapolis
is about maybe about 3 hours or so south of Duluth. About a little bit more, about 3.5 south of Duluth, Minnesota.
I used to go to Brainerd every once in a while. You familiar with Brainerd, Minnesota?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Cabins, the cabins are there in
It's
Brandon.
close to the Indian reservation, isn't it?
Yeah, not too far. Not too far. I think it's Bemidji. That's right on top. Yeah, Bemidji, Minnesota, where the reservations are, the Native American reservations. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't you tell us about what's going on with your case? So how many kids we talking?
All right, so we're talking one child for myself, but so this is not just about myself, Steve. Though I am fighting those who are looking to infringe upon my what's called our unalienable rights, natural fundamental right to parents, and they're doing it all under the guise of what's called the Title Roman numeral 4-D incentives that judicial bodies receive. So just to give a quick rough, Title 42 is 100% voluntary, and here's the thing. It's the I and I've discussed this with many who we've also taken time to sharpen each other's swords on the law of the land, which would be the Bill of Rights that we, the people, according to the preamble, we, the people who establish what justice and domestic tranquility for our good. We can abolish anything that is not for our good as well. That is the preamble. And that's pretty much paraphrasing the preamble. I could read it word for word; it would still read the same. So my situation is with my daughter. What has taken place is fraud upon the court and denial of due process, using those attempts by public officers, two judges and two bar members, which really a judge is just a bar member in a row, to be honest with you, but four officers of the court, using these tactics, and at first I didn't see it. This started September 24th, 2016. So about two and a half years ago. Not quite three, because we're not in September of this year. So this started then, and it was a fraud situation that started when the ex-wife of myself turned in a document, right? A document which is not an affidavit. It was under oath, penalty of perjury. It had 5 statements of vague lies all over the place. So what was used against me was, and then an officer of the court took it to the court, creating the fraud upon the court, and creating the fraud upon the court, using it as false misrepresentation for the case to even come about, to manufacture controversy, which a judicial body is not allowed to do. They are all bound by the United States Constitution. The Constitution of the United States of America, they are all bound by it. Show me any part of that law that states that they are allowed to take false misrepresentations, use them as factual when it's easily proven to be wrong. And I'll give you one example. Line 3 states that I, as the respondent, is using the all caps, right? Which is not me, but I, all capital letters, Anwar Congress, was found guilty and convicted of domestic abuse. That has never happened. As a matter of fact, I have a super clean record, extremely clean record, right? Never happened, right? So that was one. 2, I threatened the life of my child and my ex-wife. That never happened. Never happened. So these are malicious lies in fact that were already proven to be wrong. But what happened? They would not allow the evidence to be presented. They denied me due process, right? And how did they do that? Okay, trying to control the litigation, trying to block out what I was saying. So at first I hired an attorney, and that was a wrong move on my part. Why? Because an attorney's first responsibility is to the court, not to the client. And this situation continues to fester. Why? Because the longer the fight goes, the longer the longer the fight goes, the more monies that are given to bar members. This is especially true. You can look this up on YouTube, where a gentleman in Illinois, his name is Michael Strauss, he laid it out there. And he's a bar member. And Illinois was trying to get House Bill 4113 last year to pass, right? And it's called a fair share parenting bill. Though they don't really need one, because our First and Fourth Amendments of the Bill of Rights protects our parenting aspect as well. But I won't go into it too deep, but I definitely will if you guys would like to know why, how. So anyway, this gentleman, Michael Strauss, who's a bar member, somebody who opposed the fair share parenting, all that opposed the Illinois, Steve and John, they were all bar members. I can't make this up, gentlemen. I can pull the stat line and send it to you via email. Now, why is that? Why is the bar against fair share parenting? Well, if they can't get the billable hours, they can't make the money. And then the GALs, they make money off of it. The longer the fight goes, the more they are paid for the guardian ad litem, right? So this is a emolument scheme with the judicial fraud as well. Why? Because the more a parent is put on child support and separated from their child, they don't care about, that's not the best interest of the child. The child loves both parents. And to force a child to choose and pick one is absolute abuse of a child. And we're talking about a child from 0 to 5 in the developmental stage, right? So the goal is, okay, let's rip the parent away. One of the parents, mostly 92.1%, according to CDC.gov, according to parentalrights.org, most of the time that is the father. The fathers are being ripped out. The head of the house, the head of the family is being ripped out. So here's the thing. They get incentives. States make money on child support. For every $3 a parent pays, the state is making $3 off of it. They hold it, build up interest, then release, right? So they're making money off of it. They're making money off of it with fees and so forth. What I did not know 2.5 years ago, I've read my American jurisprudence, the Constitution, the preamble, the Declaration of Independence speaks on this so eloquently. I love it. And also Black's Law Dictionary, and I'm preparing a remonstrance for the state of Virginia that is doing this. The state of Virginia is a swamp of judicial fraud and abuse, judicial abuse of United States of America nationals. That will be those who are citizens, born of this nation, a part of this nation, and so forth, right? Our rights are protected. So, and our rights are the common law. That's what we are bound by. The common law is the Bill of Rights. So what has happened is, let's use fraud to manufacture controversy. Let's rip the parent away. Most of the time, it's the parent that's financially well off. And after we do that, now let's use deceit to get them to buy into Title 42, as to get the other parent to believe that Title 42 is mandatory when it is 100% voluntary.
Well, Anwar, first I'd like to say thank you for your service, and I was listening to your take on attorneys. That a lot of people don't realize that attorneys are officer of the courts, and that they all belong to a organization called the State Bar, also with the judges, because judges are first attorneys before they became judges. They all belong to the State Bar. And you were talking about the Constitution a little bit, and it kind of triggered my memory of something that took place yesterday when I was in the a courtroom observing in family court here in Clark County. And one of the things that was argued, it was the mother was telling the judge that she's been breastfeeding her 9-month-old child, and from birth, and the judge says, well, if dad needs overnight visits and dad needs to have visits for up to 5 days or whatever the case might be, and the judge and the litigant was saying, hey, I don't have that much food on stock, with the pump and so on, and the judge was telling the litigant to use formula. So the mother says, well, that's a violation of my constitutional rights because I have the constitutional right to give my child breast milk. And you can't deny me of those rights, which she's right. But a lot of people don't realize that their constitutional rights is so huge, and that maybe sometimes the judge don't even know the Constitution to begin with. So if you're going to argue your point, you need to make sure that all your rights before you get before a judge. And I just wanted to piggyback on what you said about the Constitution.
Roger that, Steve. So I got a quick question. And what you just said is a bit perplexing and would be absolutely problematic. The oath of service states, and if I'm not correct, Steve, first I want to say thank you for your service because you are a Marine, correct?
Correct. I'm also sitting with an Army dog too, so.
Roger that. Okay.
Well, you're an Army dog too, so that's like two peas in the pie.
Yeah. And I got much respect to my Semper Fi brothers as well. So here's what I'm saying.
Or sister.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
So here's what the oath of service thing. When you as a judge goes from mostly, you're correct, an attorney that becomes a judge, you swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. That is problematic when you do not know the oath that you are swearing. I have FOIA'd judges for the oath of service with no response, which a lot of them have put themselves in grave trouble by not responding to my FOIA. Freedom of Information Act is a FOIA, right? So that has landed 2 judges in hot water in Virginia, in the state of Virginia. So with that being stated, there's no.
Hold on a second.
Ask a question?
Hold on a second. Are you in Virginia or Minnesota?
That was my question.
So I'm in Minnesota, but the situation is taking place in Newport News, Virginia, unlawful family court.
So was the
Because
child relocated from Minnesota to Virginia?
So my child, even when this thing first started, my child hadn't even resided in. My child and the ex-wife hadn't even resided in Virginia for 6 months. But I'm gonna get to that as well.
Can I ask a question real quick?
The documentation. Oh, my apologies.
No, you're fine. For my clarification, I was under the understanding that the case had to be seen in the residency of the child and the mother, and if they haven't lived here in 6 months, then they don't have residency. Why is the case in Virginia?
So here's the thing. July 1st was it's not based on the child and the mother, and I'm going to tell you where that comes from. That's some kind of code or statute, right? That you just read from. Am I correct?
No, it's just something I know. So
okay,
she's got good memory.
It's not,
yeah.
So yeah. So okay. So let me clarify. There's nothing in the Constitution, equal protection under the law. There's nothing in the Constitution in our common law that states a mom or a particular person or gender, whatever, has primary custody of anything based on whatever the case, right? That would not be equal protection under the law. So that would be unconstitutional. That's why the VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, was deemed unconstitutional in 2000. So I'm gonna go back to it. Okay, so let's go here. Now, with that being said, the child also, you're correct. The child hasn't resided in Virginia for 6 months. Now, the ex-wife, because of our divorce not making it, being very vindictive, started this whole thing about I was found guilty of domestic abuse. Never happened. How? And then I didn't know this until I forwarded the magistrate. She filed a false protective order on the 30th of September 2016. Now, guess what? She filed. Now, let me get to you. Let me tell you what. She filed this order to what? To make it seem as if the controversy has brewed. If there's no controversy, you have to have an injury in fact also. If there's an injury in fact and there's no controversy, there is no court. So that's how they use that to sucker me into it at first. Because family court really is not even a real court. It's really some kangaroo court filled with bad actors. And let me tell you why. You have to consent. I don't have to. So what I didn't know then, and what I definitely know now, is, and I've utilized it on them, is I don't have to consent to any of that. You have no jurisdiction. You have to have subject matter and personal jurisdiction. They have neither. And you can't have jurisdiction on fraud, and you cannot have jurisdiction utilizing denial of due process tactics, because that's a clear violation of the Constitution, which is our law. They try to use statutes, codes, city ordinance, regulations, as if that's law. Supreme Court ruling, also in American jurisprudence, it states statutes are not law, codes are not law. Guess what? Guess the only ones those regulations and statutes and rules and all that nonsense applies to, that applies to government entities only, not me as the natural man created by God. All of my rights, my unalienable rights, are endowed by my God, my creator. Where did I get that from, right? Where does that come from? That comes from the Declaration of Independence. Why is that so critical? That's how we laid down the law when we kicked Britain's behind out of here. We laid down the law with the Declaration of Independence.
So do you have to go now back to Virginia to fight this? Are you fighting this in Minnesota?
No, I go to Virginia to fight it. And because here's the thing. Now I'm winning the fight more than ever. Here's why. Because I've opened up my Mason's Manual, my Black's Law Dictionary, and so forth, and I have broken them down. I broke down their argument. I broke down their fraud. They've been found out. I have 2 judges and 2 bar members and the ex-wife in the Supreme Court of Virginia, and I'm preparing what's called a remonstrance petition. I'm using my First Amendment right to what? Redress my grievances with our legislators, because they are the ones who get the impeachment aspect. So I'm going to the General Assembly. I've already had a conversation with Delegate David Yancey and Delegate Marcia Price in Newport News, Virginia. This remonstrance is actually doing quite well in Tennessee, and it has been presented in New York. The United States of America nationals have said enough kangaroo courts. We are done. So here's what I'm saying. I heard, and I also heard this, about what a judge is talking about, what a parent can do and what they can't do with their child. Let me ask you, everyone on this panel, and you guys are absolutely dynamic, and I want to make sure I get this across. Where in law does it state that a judge or any judicial body who are just public servants, we are the masters, they are the servants, we are instructing them, they do not instruct us. So where does it state that they tell me what I want to feed my child? Is this a republic or a democracy? I've been asking people this for a reason, because they seem to listen to these commercials, just like when President Obama was saying, in this democracy, I said, what democracy do you live in? We live in a republic. We have a charter that's called the Constitution. It's a republic. A democracy says that majority vote can infringe upon my rights. A republic says you can't alter anything, fundamental or civil rights. Congress cannot make laws to alter that. As a matter of fact, Congress can't even make laws.
So I take it you're a staunch Republican, Anwar.
This is a republic. It's a republic.
I got you, but I'm saying that you're a registered Republican.
Oh, am I? No, actually, I'm more along the lines of I'm middle ground.
Okay.
I'm definitely for less government. I'm definitely for less government because I've been you know shucks. We've all of us have been involved in the government aspect, and we know that too much of that is really bad. Our founding fathers knew that. That's what happened to Britain. That's what happened. That's why the Leeds resolution to Brexit from all of Britain's parliamentary ways were thrown out. Why? Because of usurpations, because of tyrannical actions and acts. Is that not what's happening in these family courts and some of these other courts as well? Why is it that we need the Innocence Project? 25, 27 years later, men convicted of crimes found out they were innocent. Mm.
Well, family court is supposed to be a civil procedure, but yet they treat litigants like they were criminals.
Family court is more of a
Absolutely.
trial
Why
than
do
it
they
is
do
when we
that though,
actually go to
Steve?
trial.
You made a great point, and I've already litigated that with my notice of special appearance, as well as how I got them in the Supreme Court of Virginia to begin with. Now, why is it they do that? I asked myself why because I'm an engineer. I use what's called the 5 whys in engineering. It's like it's very similar to you look at things from a loss prevention kind of way, a way to prevent the loss. I'm looking at the negative nexus and legal maxims of law. So why do they do that, Steve? They create a good and an evil. And the one who didn't file in family court most of the time is the one that's perceived as guilty until proven innocent. Am I correct?
True. Where's
Okay.
tell us real quick because we're running out of time. Where's your
Oh,
case?
sorry.
Where's your case now, Anwar?
So my case right now, I am. Let's see. They unlawfully incarcerated me, and I was able to get myself released December 17, 2018. So this
Well,
is
what
what's
do you mean
happening.
by they unlawfully incarcerated you?
I'm so glad you said that. So the other parent went to the magistrate with no proof. Now
Okay,
listen, with no proof, this has happened twice. This is why I got in the Supreme
gotcha.
Court. They're retaliating against me for having them served and put in. They were served October 17th and October 23rd to the Supreme Court.
Okay,
So, the Supreme Court of Virginia. So next thing you know, what is it, 10-2? I didn't even know. The ex-wife filed with the magistrate again, talking about parental kidnapping and things of that nature.
gotcha.
And the reason she did that is because she's actually under investigation for child abuse.
Right. Does she
Now,
have the child now?
no, yeah, well, actually now she does.
Do you
Now
have
let me tell you,
visitation?
no. They tried to take all of that from me. But here's
They
what
try
they
to
said.
terminate your parental rights?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They tried to. They tried to. I'm gonna tell you why I say tried. I'm gonna tell you why I say tried. So they tried to take away all of my parental rights. I got documents and so forth. I definitely will be sending you via email if you'd like to see it, Steve, John, and the awesome madam that's on the panel as well.
Actually,
I,
it's Steve, Jim, and Christina.
oh, Steve, Jim. My apologies. Steve, Jim, and Christina. My apologies. I apologize.
But
So I do have the.
Anwar, we're seriously running out of time.
Oh, got you. Okay.
Could you wrap it up and give us your point of contact if you want anybody to contact you?
Absolutely. So I wrap it up and just say, hey, guys, do not consent. You don't have to consent to anything. Look at the Declaration of Independence. Do not consent to the kangaroo courts and all that kind of stuff. Challenge jurisdiction always. And you can contact me at Anwar_Congress at yahoo.com. I have writ of habeas corpus, some things on writ of certiorari, those kind of things that I could help with. And I not only this is for we the people. I don't care about no money and none of that stuff. I mean, I'll make my money, so I'm fine. So all I'm trying to say is this is to bring our Constitution back to the forefront where people have tried to rob us with malpractice, fraud upon the court,
Right.
creating controversy, all those kind of things. So I just want to wrap it up, and I just say that's the way you can email me at Anwar, A for Alpha, N for November, W for Whiskey, A for Alpha, R for Romeo, _Congress. Same spelling as our United States Congress at yahoo.com.
Well, thank you, Mr. Congress, folks. That's Anwar Congress, who was discussing the corruption within the family court system. But don't go away. We're gonna have Keith Harmon Snow, author of the book entitled "The Worst Interest of the Child." This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jonas, and Christina Ortiz of Veterans in Politics. We'll be right back. What's the last name? Congress and shit. Keith, do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Yeah. 20 seconds, Keith. Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jones, Christina Ortiz of Veterans in Politics. We have Keith Harmon Snow, who's the author of the book entitled "The Worst Interests of the Child." Mr. Snow, how you doing today? And tell us where you're calling from.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm calling from Western Massachusetts.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
About myself?
Sure.
Well, I began in the world of capitalism as a electrical engineer working for GE Aerospace and Defense, and I worked for classified programs on missile guidance systems and nuclear weapons and that sort of stuff until 1989, and then I flew off and rode an elephant in Thailand, and that was the beginning of the end. And I've been an international journalist, human rights investigator, and genocide investigator, and a war correspondent since then.
Wow.
A genocide investigator.
That is amazing.
Well, how many degrees do you have, Mr. Snow?
Just two, the bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering.
All right. Well, you wrote this book, "The Worst Interests of the Child," which is the opposite of what the courts and family courts trying to portray. They're trying to say it's the best interests of the child. Where did you come up with this title, and what is this
What's
book
it about?
Yeah.
Well, sure, yeah, the best interest of the child. That's exactly why I chose the worst interests of the child, because after in 2011, I began to hear stories about the courts in Connecticut and the destruction of a family, a woman and her child in Connecticut, and I didn't believe these reports. And her name was Sunny Kelly, and her son's name was Max Liberty, and I didn't believe the reports that I was getting through a friend who was staying at the home of that woman, Sunny. And so I set off to prove that she was just crazy and wrong, and I found that the court system in Connecticut was a mirror to the court system in the United States generally for family courts, and it's similar to what's happening in Australia, the Netherlands, and other foreign countries,
So
white countries, and it's basically trafficking of children and parents through U.S. family courts.
Can you, okay, because I knew like you were going to, can you elaborate on that one?
Which one?
The human trafficking of children through family courts.
Well, trafficking is, internationally I worked on trafficking issues all over the world, in Afghanistan, in the Congo, in Ethiopia, in, Latin America. And trafficking is anything that involves something generally against someone's will and for profit. And that's my definition, the short version. So what we have with the court system in America, meaning the family, I'm talking about family courts. This is not necessarily true of all courts, but certainly we could talk about other courts. But the family court system in most states in the United States involve what we would call, let's stick with Connecticut, racketeering, corruption, influence peddling, and trafficking of women and children. And there's some, there's no trafficking of men, but certainly trafficking of women and children when we talk about for-profit and forcing people to do something against their will and destroying their life and perhaps putting them in a situation of absolute physical risk. That's exactly what we have in the court system in many of the courts, family courts in the United States.
Do you have I wish we had a copy of the book here.
Can we get one?
we could go back and forth. But I'm sure you're going to send us an autographed copy of the book. Is that right, Mr. Snow?
After you said that online, how can I, get away from it?
Sure, is there any
copy.
what actually motivated you to even write this book, and is there any passage in that book that would resonate with the majority of the family court litigants within this country?
Well, I think anybody who's stuck in the family, first of all, the problem with the family court, the problem with anybody stuck in the family court system, and I use the word stuck intentionally, is for the most part, unless they've reached a certain level of involvement, people believe that what I wrote in my book can't happen to them. So why would they bother buying it? The worst interest of the child, trafficking of children, family courts, blah, blah. It's not, mothers and fathers and children taken away and delivered to pedophiles, this sort of thing. Most people, most mothers, for example, will say, "Well, that's not going to happen to me. I've got a good lawyer, and okay, it's my second lawyer or it's my third lawyer, but I'm going to get through this. We're going to get through this.
All right.
It's not going to happen to me," and that's just absolutely not true. It can happen to anybody. It's happening to people who are very, very wealthy. It's happening to people who are very, very poor.
Right.
It's happening to middle class, and it happens differently to those different economic segments of the population.
Hey, Mr. Snow, when this is Jim Jonas, and thank you very much for calling on, and thank you for writing this book. One of the things when you were writing this book, did you interview people that have went or been stuck in the family court system? And if so, one of the things that I've seemed to notice with people that are involved with family court, whether it be the mother or the father, a good majority of the people, once they get into this court, they don't really truly understand their rights, and they're just, either side is so terrified of losing their children one way or another that they don't really understand their rights, and they'll do anything they're told to do. And if they don't do what the court tells them to do, then they lose their children. When you were interviewing people for this book, did you find that to be the case a lot of times?
Yeah, the people, you're absolutely right. The people who are involved in the system are terrified of the judges, and their attorney tells them to do this or that. Attorneys and judges are in it for the money.
Right.
Let's say that again. Most attorneys and judges have chosen the career they've chosen not out of some principled, moral, higher calling in life. There are certainly good attorneys, honest people out there, but once you get in the attorney system, you have to satisfy the judge. Now, we're not talking about your one case, and the attorney is going to come up before the judge on other cases, and in order to make one case go well, they'll do something to make another case go well, or they'll make compromises. They're not going to piss off the system. An attorney is not going to be disbarred on the grounds that he stood up and said, "You're delivering this kid into the hands of a pedophile, and this is wrong." What attorney is going to do that? So you've got that problem, and then you've got the problem of judges who are attorneys, mostly who have made their way up into the judicial system. They're collecting a large paycheck, and they have a position of power, and they're not going to piss off the system either.
Well, let me tell you why of what I've seen in the courts. Attorneys don't want to piss off the judge on let's say they're in the court on this case because they're worried about other cases they have before the same judge. They're worried about future cases they have before this judge. So they don't want to really rock the boat. So when a litigant goes to an attorney and say, "Hey, I want to do a judicial discipline complaint against this judge," they'll tell them, "No, don't do it," because they don't want to have that litigant that they're representing in front of that judge write a complaint about that judge, because they don't want to piss off the judge because they have other cases in front of the judge. Now, some judges don't want to piss off the attorneys because they're interested in the campaign donation come close to their election. They're interested in whether they because some of these attorneys are making more money than judges, so they're interested in different political clout that a law firm or attorney could bring to that judge, or they could be on different boards, or just in case they want to retire in 2 years, that they might want to work for this particular law firm. So these judges don't want to piss off that law firm or that attorney, and the whole system is fucking sick. Either way it goes, it's still sick. And I just wanted to add that to what you were saying. Please continue.
So I do have. So, what is one thing that when people read the book and they think that it can't happen to them because it's never your problem till it's your problem? What is one thing that people, when they read the book, should absolutely take away?
Well, there's criminal elements. There's RICO, the Racketeered Influence Corrupt Organizations Law that was put into place in the I think it was under Clinton in the 90s. RICO, there's racketeering going on that the RICO law should be applied to, both judges and, well, it's all across the board. We're not just talking about judges and lawyers. We're talking about guardian ad litem. We're talking about psychologists. We're talking about therapists. We're talking about clinicians. We're talking about the Yale Medical Clinic at Yale University, who, for one reason or another, do not serve the best interest of the child and do exactly the opposite. And so in the case of Sonny Kelly, I mean, you asked me earlier, did I talk to people? I interviewed probably 25 different mothers who'd been through the system, some of the most horrible cases. Horrible cases, just in Connecticut. And then I looked at a couple cases outside of Connecticut. And since then, since people have read my story in my book, I've received, email after email, contact on Facebook, phone calls from mothers all over the country who are in the middle of the system and they want to know what the hell to do and how to get around it, how to avoid it. So the bottom line is, if you're paying your attorney, you're there's no way out but one. And there was a movie made by that name about a mother and her child who fled the United States and demanded asylum overseas and were granted asylum, one of the few cases, on the basis of domestic violence, and that her child was going to be delivered into the father who was abusing the child. So mothers don't have, and fathers, mostly it's good, mothers. There's some fathers out there who are good fathers, but there's a lot of fathers out there who are just complete deadbeats, and I don't care if they're wealthy or not. For example, Thomas Foley ran for. He supported the campaign of one of those John McCain, I believe, who was running for president. Thomas Foley is one of the most powerful individuals in Connecticut. Thomas Foley's a psychopath, and he destroyed the life of his wife, Lisa Foley, all to get at the child. And I interviewed Lisa in great detail, and then I looked into the records of Thomas Foley, and I read the case history of Thomas and Lisa Foley, and I did that with Sonny Kelly and Max Liberty and Robert Liberty, and I did it with numerous other cases. I read these detailed trial transcripts to try to sort out what exactly was happening and what I was being told, because, as I said, it happens to different people differently, regardless of the socioeconomic class, but also for different classes it happens differently. So the upper class cases that I was looking at in Connecticut were some of the wealthiest people in the United States, and millions and millions and millions of dollars on cases. We're seeing children's trust funds liquidated by the court. We're seeing the mother's bank accounts liquidated, her property taken. The wealthy father who throws so much money at it and is obviously bribing judges. And in the case of Sonny Kelly and her son Max Liberty, I believe that in the book you will find, if you read it, that I clearly documented the involvement of the mafia.
Well, Mr. Snow, one of the things too that I would that you brought up was trafficking, and I do believe that and you were also talking, and Christina touched on it too, where when you start bringing up terms of that nature, some people that are going to get into the family court system, like you said, I think when you bring up something like trafficking, they think of these horrific stories of like the sex slave trade and all this stuff, and they don't really understand exactly what trafficking is. And I think you did a good job of describing what it was, and I think people need to understand that trafficking can be something as part of a regular, almost like a regular process, so if a judge takes the custody away from the mother and transfers that custody over to the father because of bribery or whatever the case may be by the husband, or you could switch genders on this, whichever one, that is still a form of trafficking, because you are, in a sense, you're taking that child away from the proper parent, giving them to the improper parent, based solely on money or some improper influence. So I think people need to understand that when that is a form of trafficking as well. So you need to pay attention, read your book, pay attention to what we've been bringing up here on Veterans and Politics, because even that is something that needs to be taken very seriously. It's not as simple as the judge just made a mistake.
And
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
you touched on the mob in the terms of your book. And do you still believe, after everything, that the mob did play a role in the case and that there is a lot of outside influences on it?
You know, as the previous commentator before you said, you know, people don't understand the nature of trafficking. They hear this word, they read the subtitle, they think, well, trafficking involves a bunch of Ethiopian girls who've been ripped out of their village and thrown into a container that shipped across to Saudi Arabia. Trafficking involves the family. The family courts involve trafficking because the child is being taken from a good parent and delivered to an abuser for some motive other than, you know, the best interest of the child. Now, the question of the mob, the same thing. People don't understand what the mob is. People don't understand what organized crime is. I mean, Bill Clinton was involved in organized crime. Donald Trump is involved in organized crime. Barack Obama was involved in organized crime. You know, every single American president, for the most part, has been involved in organized crime. But what I'm talking about, and what I'm talking about down in Connecticut, was where I documented that there was some really shady operations going on involving these supervised visitations. This guy created this supervised visitation company, and his job was to, you know, supervise visitation. Well, the court orders this is part of the process. It's a very complex process. It's a very complex process whereby they will take a child from a good mother and give it to an abusive father, not just for pure profit, but also to support, you know, in this case, male power, male dominance. And the involvement of the supervised visitation was, you know, you think about it on its surface. Okay, well, yeah, okay, somebody's committing a problem. Well, the court orders that the mother be forced to undergo supervised visitation, when in the case of my book, the mother was the one who was not raping the child. The father was raping the child. And organized in the sense that Sonny Kelly believed that her child was being taken into dungeon-like basements and dragged across the rug in situations involving sexual crimes against a child. This is not just, you know, taking a kid from its mother and giving it to a father who's got a few, you know, sexual fantasies, and is abusing. It's much deeper than that. And the involvement of the supervised visitation company was such that there was clearly, the guy was a police officer. He has properties down in Miami. You know, you look at his financial records and his other involvement in the world, and it was very subversive, clandestine, and there was something going on.
Well, Mr. Snow, I really enjoy our conversation, but we're running out of time, and there's a couple things I'm gonna ask of you. The first thing I'm gonna ask of you is to let everybody know where to get this book, and the second thing is, if you send me some books, you know, like with your little autograph on there, to Steve with love from Keith Harmon Snow, to Jim with love, to Christina with love, at P.O. Box 28211, Las Vegas, Nevada 89126. I will then buy a book for every single family court judge and hand deliver it to them. That deal?
Does your deal require me to fund the books that I'm sending to you, or are you saying you're going to buy them?
No, I'm gonna buy the ones to give to the family court. You're just sending us a book courtesy.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm happy to send you all a book, and you will buy. Which judges you're going to send them to?
All of them.
In Las Vegas, you mean?
And then in the state of Nevada.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well,
I'm going to make sure that each one of them get a copy of that book, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, I can say with love to you, and I'll say something else to Steve. You got it. I'm just going to get the address from you again later, but sure, of course.
Okay, and this video will be up. It'll be up within 48 hours. So, you could. Plus, you'll touch base with me anyway. So if you could give us your point of contact if you want, and where they could get a hold of this book, that would work for other litigants or anybody else that is listening.
Sure. The book can be purchased on Amazon, or I think if you search on it, you can go directly to the publisher. But through Amazon, it's very easy. And my contact, you'd like my email address or what?
Sure.
My website is consciousbeingalliance.com. It's Conscious Being Alliance, and my work as a war correspondent photographer is on this, and stories about this, including this one on the Social Documentary Network.
Okay. Called
the Social Documentary Network. So, did you want my email address?
Yeah. Go ahead and give it out.
People can reach me through my email address, which is Keith.Harmon, Harmon, .snow@gmail.com. That's my full name. It's on the book, Keith Harmon Snow, and there's dots between them, Keith.Harmon.snow@gmail.com.
Well,
now,
Mr.
people will buy the book, and I don't recommend people buy the book, but people want to understand the nature of the court system. And what's really important is understanding that these mothers who are crying that this is going on, nobody's believing them.
Right. That's
Nobody's
true.
believing them. And fathers, too, some good fathers, they're saying this is going on, and nobody wants to believe it. People don't want to believe it. It's collective.
It's like the three monkeys, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil.
And it can happen to anybody.
Absolutely. Folks, thanks again for coming on the show, Mr. Snow. Folks, that's Keith Harmon Snow, author of the book entitled The Worst Interests of the Child. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, and Christina Ortiz of Veterans in Politics. Until next week.